Steve Hargadown, and we're now well into the first day of the Library 2.013 conference. We're so glad that you're here. We're delighted to have Buhle Mbambo-Thata with us as a keynote speaker. Welcome, and I'm sorry if you were in the wrong room before, but we're sure glad you're in the right one now. Thanks to our conference sponsors and supporters. We so appreciate San Jose State University, the School of Library and Information Science, a terrific partner for the conference, the founding partner. Thanks to Follett, Blackboard Collaborate, and EdWeb for additional support, and to some great partners, but a terrific group of organizations that have promoted the conference this year. This is a chance for those of you who are, before I get there, this event is also being promoted by Connected Educator Month, and there will be a badge at the end of the event. So wait for that slide after our keynote is done, and you'll have a claim code to get a badge. This is a chance for you to indicate where you're participating from. Look to the left of the map. You're looking for the star icon. It's the second icon down. You're going to double-click on it and then click on the map. And it's fun if you put your location, the weather, anything else you'd like us to know in that chat. Am I hard to hear?
Yes, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Okay, there is a slider bar on top of the, you'll see the talk button and then a video button.
Yes.
On top of the video button, you can push that slider over, and that should raise your volume.
I've raised it to the top. Thank you.
Okay, I think you may have raised your microphone to the top because you got louder. There are two sliders. Make sure you it's the second one.
Okay.
There you go. And you're not going to be hearing from me anyway, so you're coming through loud and clear. Okay,
Right.
looks like New Zealand. I haven't been watching the chat, but New Zealand, North America. West Virginia, Los Angeles, Texas.
Somebody just joined us from Southeast. Can't see where that is. Singapore?
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be our friend from Thailand, I think. Or someone else, let us know. I think it's Jambles. How fun. Keep those locations going in the chat.
Thank
I want to make sure we move forward. And Buhle, I'm turning the time over to you now. And if you need help moving the slides, let me know.
Thank you very much, Steve. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this virtual conference from the comfort of Pretoria, where it is spring right now. And welcome to those who have joined us from the different parts of the world, and trust that we'll have a good time of engagement this evening. I shall go right ahead, Stephen, with the outline of my presentation. And I'm talking today about positioning African libraries for the digital age. And we'll share some examples of Africa's digital library initiatives that are really bringing African libraries into the digital age. It's a subject about which I'm passionate, and it's a subject that I believe locates African libraries right where they belong in the 21st century. This will be the outline of my presentation. I will talk about the opportunities that broadband and internet access are providing for libraries. And for a very short while, I will highlight some of our challenges, but I'll spend a lot more time talking about our opportunities and give examples of some of the anticipated activities in the future, as well as talk about some library initiatives, digital initiatives, and then in conclusion, we'll again speak about the opportunities. In part one of my presentation, I just give a brief highlight there in that map about the number of, or the density of internet connectivity in the different parts of the world. And while in 2007, it was at that number, by 2012, it had doubled in all parts of the world. But you'll see, according to this slide, that in Africa, it actually went up about 5 times the number of internet usage. And that is a very good indication of just how hungry Africa and African populations are for working in digital spaces and really working in the spaces where the rest of the world is working. The next slide, and some of you might have seen it from the Internet World Stats, indicates the density of internet in the different parts of the world. And it is looking very good in most countries. And it grows every day. And in fact, this is a 2012 slide. I'm sure that if we would see a 2013 slide, we would see that there has been a growth, a further growth in Rwanda, which has the fastest internet in Africa, but it is currently not on this slide. A growth in Kenya, and you see the amazing growth in Nigeria. And therefore, you'll see that as this increases, as the density increases, the number of people that are using the internet in those countries and putting and downloading content is really increasing. There are other opportunities that are bringing or using this old term, leapfrogging African users into the internet age. And I'll just share a few examples that have been in the news recently. And the most recent one was from Al Jazeera, the article on Africa leapfrogs into the internet access. And if you go to that link, and I don't want to go into it now in case I get lost in this internet access this evening and mess up my presentation, but I invite you to go to that link and see that article from Al Jazeera. There was recently a TED Talk, also by Juliana Roche, on how their company, their organization BRCK, is bringing again internet connectivity to Africa. Again, in Al Jazeera back in June, there was an article about how Google was working even harder to bring access to even more communities in Africa. And all that this does is provide the infrastructure, increase the density, and enable more people to participate. A number of you would have seen this map. I call it the spaghetti map, with all the pipes and the tubes around the continent, indicating how Africa is being connected in many ways, and Africa is being connected by undersea cable, which is cheaper and faster perhaps than satellite. And many countries on the continent, even in the interior, the ones that don't have a coast, are linking to the cables on the west or the east of Africa and making sure that this fast speed is brought into their countries. I've had the opportunity to drive from Cape Town to quite into the north of Central Africa, and I've seen just how on the side of the highway there has been a lot of fiber being laid to bring connectivity. And I think it's a different type of Cape to Cairo inland, as more and more countries along that route from Cape Town to Cairo are getting connected. We've also seen some pilots that are showing, or that are already getting onto the success and using the available technology. There's an article recently in a South African newspaper. Again, if you go to that link, you'll see just how one school, starting from 2011, gave tablets to students in a pilot, and the results of those students immediately improved. And they've seen a pass rate of increase of 77%. So obviously learning in that digital space is giving students more content, giving them an exciting opportunity to learn from others in other parts of the world. And if you get to that link, you'll see that there's a lot more, a much more detailed article, an interesting article to read. I thought I would just deal with the challenges quickly. And as you all know, that we often have unstable environments on the continent in different parts. Sometimes it's war, sometimes it's civil unrest. and it affects, perhaps even deters some of the inroads that might have been made in bringing libraries to communities or bringing African content to other spaces. You have heard about libraries being destroyed due to civil unrest. Also, you would have seen the challenges about the Timbuktu manuscripts in Mali and how the war affected that. But you also will have heard that because a lot of those manuscripts had been digitized, the content at least has been preserved. But another one that is a common challenge for us is that a lot of African libraries really continue to set or to work at a pace or on an agenda set elsewhere. And because they do, they cannot set their own priorities of what their communities need, of what their communities require, of what the communities need to be doing. But they work on an agenda that perhaps seeks to emulate big libraries elsewhere. And a fourth challenge is that a lot of the digital content that we use, particularly in universities and high schools, is imported and is expensive. So there isn't as much local content being produced for high school. But all these challenges can also be turned around to be opportunities. And as African librarians of the 21st century, we work to turn these challenges into opportunities. And so I'm going to share some of the opportunities of infrastructure, but also of content that we have to turn those challenges into opportunity. The first one, and that excites most of us, even those of us who are a little older, is that Africa is a very young population. And the UN General Secretary said this very well on Africa Day in 2011, that 70% of the population of Africa is under 30. And I've seen different statistics about that size. And that, to me, presents hope. Hope that these younger Africans will demand a different kind of service, require different kind of service, and the libraries will respond differently to these young populations. You see on that chat, you see on this chat, excuse me, excuse me, just how that population is comparing with the rest of the world. Excuse me. And more statistics, I'm going to get some water just now. Thank you. Excuse me. I hope you can hear me. I was just disturbed by a little cough, but I think I've come back. Can you hear me? Okay. So I was saying that 62% of the population is also, according to the Millennium Project, under the age of 25. And we've seen literature indicating that this growing population is often, and young populations often lead to economic growth. And of course, the opposite is true, that when the population gets a little more aged, perhaps it becomes less economically active. So the hope is that this young African population, this young continent, will will be also economically active. And the hunger for education and for engagement in the digital space for these young populations continues to grow. And librarians have a particularly important role in bringing content that will enable these young populations to grow and find diverse knowledge from the different parts of the world and learn in 21st century spaces. Another real opportunity is the increase and the growth in mobile penetration. You see that the statistics, and Africa is doing very well indeed, and you see in the next slide just that density in the very different countries of Africa. In the countries of the south of Africa, 90% penetration with mobile phone. To the west, there's a highest there of 93, and I think that's Nigeria. And in Central Africa, 80%. Indeed, this growth in the expansion of mobile phones fitting very well with the oral orientation of Africa, but also the portability of these mobiles means that people can be reached in different parts, in remote areas with content that could be life-saving in some spaces. So there's a real opportunity there with the penetration of mobiles. We've seen also in the recent months that there has been a reduction in costs in broadband in many countries as competition increases. We've seen efforts by universities and research networks to work together and collaborate to bring the cost of connectivity down. And that's helping many universities get access to the internet cheaply. Because again, coming back to the young population, that there's an increase in the number of digital citizens in Africa. The demand and requirement for digital content is increasing, but also an opportunity is created for them to put their own content in these digital spaces. We've seen how mobile phones are transforming everything from banking to agriculture to health, and probably very soon politics too. But I trust that libraries have a real role to continue as intermediaries to serve these populations and bring digital content to many of these spaces. We've seen a number of spaces in which mobiles are used in education. A good example is a conference in 2011 in which the U.S. agency brought together a number of organizations that are using mobiles for education. But we've also seen with the M-Libraries conference that there's an increasing number of Africans participating in those. My own university, the University of South Africa, often participates at M-Libraries and shares how we use mobiles to reach students, distance education students in remote spaces. So what does Africa's digital future look like? And what is the current digital placement of Africa looking like? There's a number of growth, and we've seen a growth in the number of institutional repositories by discipline, by institute, and sometimes even run by government. And that means that a lot of academic content written on the continent is now available online in open spaces. We've seen a growth of IR's institutional repositories in countries, and this table indicates the sizes of the collections and the number of records in Egypt, in South Africa, in Kenya, in Egypt. And every day, the number of these repositories grows. We've seen a new growth of information hubs on the continent, where young people are getting together to develop content, to develop technology that solves problems for Africa. And we've seen in many spaces that these information hubs are being given spaces in libraries or collaborating with libraries so that content is shared, that innovation happens in these information hubs, but also is used to solve some of the library's current information problems. The next slide indicates the density of those hubs. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them in West Africa there. There's quite a few in East Africa, and there's quite a few in Southern Africa. And as these young people get together to work on finding solutions for Africa's digital problems, I believe that we will see a real revolution in the digital content that is produced by these 70% of Africa's under 30. There's a plan by a number of organizations, and I give an example here by the For Africa initiative, that indicates that by 2016, this initiative will place tens of thousands, tens of millions of smart devices in African youth, helping them to build SMEs, helping them to learn online, helping them to work online, and helping them to work independently. And so by 2016, the way our young people are working is going to be completely revolutionized. MTN Uganda is engaged in an ICT roadmap, again connecting that, what I call the spaghetti map, connecting that to Uganda, which is an inland country. But I was recently in Uganda and saw how MTN Uganda is working to bring connectivity to libraries in Uganda. And that's a new and different type of collaboration, enabling libraries to be connected. And if more of these private sector and public sector initiatives would continue to expand, we will see a new strength brought to libraries and more content provided for people as the private sector works together with the public sector. And now specifically to digital library initiatives, and I focus largely here on those provided by community libraries as opposed to, for example, university libraries or research libraries, largely because they are exciting, but largely because they're doing something completely different. The one example, and I've used this slide many times because I find it so informative, that the Remusa Public Library in Botswana plays an active role in reducing HIV/AIDS in the community. And as you can see in this slide, unfortunately the link here is not shown, in this slide, that the young people there are not actually working inside a library proper, but they're working on library grounds, building libraries, building gardens, and you're finding content that helps them to build better gardens and bring vegetables and improve life of the community. And it's a real interesting intersection between getting information from the library, providing that information on HIV/AIDS, but also providing information on wellness. And that space is happening on library grounds. Another example is this life-changing example in Ghana, where the city of Tamale is working to bring knowledge. City of Tamale Libraries works to bring knowledge to mobile phones, health information, information on maternal health, to people that would not be able to get to a clinic. And the collaboration between the library, the radio service, as well as getting that information from the internet, is revolutionizing the way libraries are delivering content to people and helping them to find the latest information without walking miles and miles to a clinic as they would have needed to do in the past. Another example again is related to health, and this is the e-health corners that the Kenya National Library Service provides widely through its library network. And in each of their libraries, it provides these e-health corners dedicated to health workers who can provide and do provide health information with assistance of trained librarians and working with online databases to provide the latest information that then the health workers can provide to communities. In Uganda, because they have a lot of sunshine, they've turned to solar to provide energy for libraries and are providing information as well as literacy classes, small business training, microfinance, and bringing a new intersection that the library is not just saying, go find information over there, but is turning that information into usage that members of the community can benefit from. There's also other developments that are also exciting in the continent. Not only those examples from the individual countries that I've spoken about, but across the continent, the series of conferences, the African Library Summit, that have sought to bring Africans and African library leaders together to deliberate how best the continent libraries can bring the continent into the 21st century. And 2011 started with the African Library Summit. Successful African Public Library Summit was held in 2012, which brought together government leaders and leading library directors to deliberate on how can public libraries, national library services, provide better access to information. And we've seen out of this emerging, for example, an African Public Library Network, an African Library and Information Association that are helping to set up an agenda for library development on the continent. The interesting work that's being done around the ICADA conference, the latest one that was held in Morocco in May, and this is the conference on African digital libraries and archives, which brings together initiatives on the continent focusing on libraries and related institutions on how to build the capacity of libraries to digitize but preserve also the digital content. And the themes of the conference vary from year to year, but the value of it is that it is bringing a common space for Africans on the continent to deliberate on this very important matter. I must now come to a conclusion, and the first part I'd like to say is that there is a real role for libraries there to work with this infrastructure, to build and bridge the digital divide. Not the infrastructure digital divide is fast being bridged, and the opportunity sits with libraries, learning communities, and other communities to bring content that will help to bring that bridge that gap. This will take a lot of training. It will take creativity on the part of librarians, but the next generation of librarians will need to service their people in a different way. And obviously then, training will play a very critical part. What have I said? I've also said in this presentation today that Africans are setting their own agenda and prioritization in terms of library development. And initiatives like ICADLA, the African Library Summit, the Association of African Libraries and Information Institutions are all initiatives that are helping to set that agenda. The growth of digital citizens with the young populations in Africa is also providing another opportunity that will galvanize libraries to bring relevant, local information that will help to solve and address the issues raised by these 70% under 30 populations. The scaling of digital repositories, as you saw, will help again to bring academic and local content into spaces, helping to spur and close the gap that is often expressed about African content and digital content. The setting up of a library agenda itself is one that I think is most exciting and will uplift African communities. And as Africa begins to, or continues to speak with one voice, sets priorities in working in digital spaces, these 70% under 30 populations will truly be playing equally with other parts of the world. And I believe strongly that libraries have a critical role in serving
So if you'd like to clap, clapping icon
I'd
is
like
not
to
easy to
acknowledge
find.
the
It's
assistance I've
under
received from
the
my
smiley
colleagues
face, you
in
hover over
preparing
that,
this
and then
slide,
you'll see the
staff
applause
colleagues in the research unit of the
Buhle,
library,
there are
planning
two
and quality
questions
assurance
that have been asked
section,
so far
and
that I
also
caught,
assistance I've
and I
received
can ask them
from
for
the
you. And
colleagues
if
in the
you want to
institutional
ask a
repository
question, you
of
can also
UNESCO. Thank
raise
you
your
very
virtual
much
hand,
for
which is the hand icon. It looks like Carla Gay and Jeanette had raised
for
their
your
hands. I don't know if they were
assistance.
clapping
But I'd also like to thank
or
you
if
for
they
your
actually had a question,
attention,
but I'll start
and
with
I'm
a
happy to
question from
receive
Beth.
comments
She
and
wanted to
questions.
know, is the
Thank you
Africa
very
Library
much for your
Summit
attention.
mostly in person, mostly online, or both? Araba wants to know, well, she says, great
It's
that Africa is
mainly
setting
in
its own
person.
agenda. What are plans
But
for improving
like
the paucity
every
of
modern
current
conference,
materials in
it's
some
often
academic libraries?
also available.
For the
People are
low
tweeting
amount,
it, and sometimes we are able to
or lack, I think.
to broadcast it on the web if there's strong enough bandwidth in the place in which we work. But it is largely in person, and the last one was in July in Pretoria. Yes, it's a very good question, and the challenge is often that the libraries, well, not the libraries, the universities tend to use content from elsewhere to teach. But what universities are doing together with the libraries is having, many universities are having very, very intense digitization projects, including institutional repositories that seeks to increase the local content that is held in the university, helping to expose it. And if countries on the continent,
we'll let them respond in the chat.
is really working on that,
Fatima wanted to know what your thoughts are about librarians participating in global repositories as librarians self-archiving.
Then that possibility will be closed, because what may be available at one university in Zimbabwe can be shared perhaps with another university in that country, which is difficult if that local content is only in print. I don't know if I answered that well, Steve. I strongly believe that the advantages of
so Carla
digital
Gay, your hand
content
is up. I'm thinking
are actually
you wanted to ask a question
circumvented
using the
by
microphone. So I'm giving you microphone
disconnected
privileges,
repositories.
and you just click on the talk button for us to hear you.
A global repository or global portal that creates links, as some attempts have been done, to institutional repositories in the world, will help to connect.
No, I was telling the member of the audience who had her hand raised, she could take the microphone, but maybe she was
so I strongly believe in that connection.
So if you have a question for Buhle, you can put it in the chat by typing it in, or you can raise your virtual hand, which is the third icon over in the participant window. It's a hand icon. Carla says her microphone is not working.
I didn't get that question. Should I click on the microphone?
I think so too. I think maybe we're done. Well, no, she has her hand raised, but you can see those red dots. That means there's an audio slowdown for her. And she put a note in the chat. I'm impressed with the cupboard. Mike not
I think
working.
Kalaga's microphone is having a challenge. I can't hear her. I think we're done, Steve, and thank you very much. I've had a very engaged. Should we go try to do something? Is she sending a text?
Yeah.
Oh, got it. And there was a suggestion from David Lurcher, who I think has left the room, so I can't call on him. But
and she said she's just sent a note to say she would like to hear more. But my email address is at the bottom there.
It's there at the bottom of the chat.
And I'm quite happy to engage in discussions.
I wonder if the national libraries could begin an initiative to have the children and teens of the various countries
and I can send you more information on those cupboard libraries
could be distributed
of
everywhere.
Kenya
There was
as
a
well
connection.
that she's asking about.
Books about animals. So tires? I don't know what that is. Families, etc. And they could be in both the local language and the official language of the country. Their teachers could help them so that there would be quality materials online.
I did not get the suggestion. It's a very good suggestion, and I must say, when I was mentioning the number of current initiatives on the continent that are seeking to bring cohesion, is that the directors of national libraries
we'll make one final request here. If you have a
recently formed an African chapter of CDNL.
There was something there I was missing.
And I will certainly bring the suggestion to their attention that as one of the programs and projects that they could do, this could be one possibility of them working with the young populations to write programs in local languages, or to provide hub spaces, information hub spaces for them to do that.
That icon doesn't always indicate that they're typing. It could be they've Beth, if you're interested.
Is Donna sending a question? And unfortunately, it takes a while for the text to come through to me.
Okay, I think Don and Beth are indicating they're good, so I think we're done.
Yeah. Stories could be another space, and maybe again the national libraries could again do stories. Some are already doing this, but it could be another project that this conference could also take on.
We'll see, and I need to get the code here for the badge. It will take 1 second for me to do that. And
all right. Well, thank you very much. This has been very, very, very interesting. I see that my
yes.
president of LIASA just joined us.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for finding the right room.
We are almost done.
And
thank you very much.
Time. Most appreciated.
There is a question coming in though from Fatima, I think.
Thank you so much. If somebody's waiting for a badge code, give me 2 seconds. I forgot to put it in the slide, and I will grab it and be right back.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Steve?
And the presentation recording will be up in about 10 minutes.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Feel free to go to the website.
May the rest of the conference go well.
And you'll be able to watch the recording very quickly.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sorry, they can actually download the files, the slides from this recording or in the room now. If you would like to post the actual slide deck, there's no natural place to do that. It's probably easier for people just to download it from this recording file. Okay, so the code for the Connected Education badge is now up. I'll put it in the chat as well. And we'll say goodbye and thank you. Thank you, Buhle. Bye now.